Hello and welcome to Focus on the Arts. I am Paul Kreider, Dean of the College of Creative Arts at West Virginia University in Morgantown. Our show attempts to excite our audience about new and interesting arts events and practices occurring within the university and the state of West Virginia. Our show also serves to inform you about the wonderful creative arts programs at WVU. Our Focus on the Arts has two guests today. Here with me are Associate Professor of Music Paul Cie, who is Director of WVU's Jazz Studies program, and Dr. Michael Vercelli, who is an Assistant Professor of World Music and the Director of the World Music Performance Center. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
So let's just talk briefly about you two generally at first here, about your artistic pursuits and what you have going on. Paul, let's start with you.
The most recent thing I've been doing is an electroacoustic duet called Space Genetics that utilizes live digital sampling, use of computers and woodwinds, and I collaborate with an alum from the jazz program, Eric Haltmeyer, who lives up in Massachusetts, and we've been performing all over the world with that recently, and also with a cue-driven system for improvised democratic engagement that we've taken all over the world.
Now, you're going to have to explain to the audience what that means.
It's, maybe me too.
It's a system of hand gestures given to musicians that they interpret those signals musically. It's an actual written piece.
Okay.
And we've done it with everything from elementary students to college-age students, and talked about it all over the world. We just most recently got back from Greece, where we were talking about it.
Excellent. And so you're a jazz musician?
Yes.
And your instruments are?
Flute and saxophone primarily.
Flute and sax, right. That's great. I heard Paul play saxophone one concert, and I was blown away. And then another concert, I heard him play the flute, and I was, you got to be kidding me. Fantastic. So,
thank you.
Really, really fine musician. Appreciate it. So, Michael, let's talk about you for a second. Your interests are world music, obviously.
World music, mostly. My background is in percussion, so mostly my research focuses on percussion from different parts of the world, mostly in Ghana, where I've done a lot of field work, and also we've done quite a bit of collaborative work in Brazil, where things have happened. My most recent project is with, I had a master musician from Ghana in residency at WVU in the spring. He was on campus for 10 weeks in the spring, and we did a collaborative recording actually his traditional funeral music from the ethnic group that he's from in northern Ghana. So it's this will be the first of its kind recording to really encompass the whole music of his traditional funerals.
Great, great. Well, we'll come back to that. That's fascinating. So, Paul, let's start with you in terms of talking about the jazz program. What do you feel makes the jazz program special or unique at this point?
I think the distinguishing feature of the program is its diversity. That there's always a large number of groups, and it's not a typical jazz program at all. A tremendously wide variety of styles are covered, a definite focus on improvisation, on newer styles as well as older, incorporating electronics, incorporating world music, fusing actually with part of the world music program where we have Brazilian jazz ensembles, that sort of thing, or Cuban jazz ensembles. So we really try to collaborate in that way. The students pretty much are in charge of the direction that these groups go, and I just see myself as kind of a guiding force and a place where they can get information and some coaching. And so a group will come, or some individuals will come, and they'll have a certain idea of something they want to do, and I'll help them find the repertoire and write the arrangements for them, or help them write their own arrangements. So it's very student-driven in that way.
Okay. So I would like to hear you talk a little bit for our audience about improvisation and teaching improvisation. So, I mean, a lot of people are kind of stymied by it, you know, but there actually is a method. There's things you have to learn. Just basically just tell us, our audience, what that is.
Well, in terms of teaching improvisation versus jazz improvisation, there's a difference. But in terms of jazz improvisation, there's definitely a theoretical background that is necessary. That you teach fundamentals of music. You're teaching scales and chords and rhythmic ideas, and showing how those things go together. That great jazz musicians have a tremendous amount of musical knowledge. It's not just pulled out of thin air. And so we actually have an entire year-long course in jazz improvisation where all these things are dealt with. And of course, knowing the tradition, being aware of the music that's out there, knowing the history, knowing how what you're doing fits into it is very important.
Great, great. You talk about tradition, and let's turn to world music and say, you know, is there a tradition of world music study in the United States today?
There is a tradition of most universities would call it under the umbrella of ethnomusicology. That's generally ethnomusicology refers to the study of music in culture or music as culture. I think what we do at WVU and what I try to foster there is really a community-centered approach where the students get involved with the ensemble and they learn something culturally about the music that they're playing. They know where the instruments come from. They know how they're used in a traditional setting. They know a little bit about the people that use them, why they use them, what other resources they may or may not have, a little bit of history about what it encompasses to make that music.
When you say ensemble, you're actually, at WVU, you're referring to several world music ensembles. You want to tell us what they are?
Yeah, we have a bunch. We have a steel band. We have an African music and dance ensemble. We have an Indonesian gamelan orchestra. There's the Brazilian ensemble, or Brazilian jazz ensemble as it crosses over. There's a Japanese taiko ensemble. And this semester we're actually running a Jill ensemble. A Jill is a xylophone from northern Ghana, who I made a reference to that musician that was in residency in the spring. He got a lot of students really excited about that traditional instrument. So we have a small ensemble that's focusing on Jill this semester.
And those don't run every semester. All those ensembles don't run every semester. You rotate some of those in and out. And this year we have two gamelan ensembles. Is that correct?
We do. We have both a Javanese and a Balinese set of instruments. This semester or this year we're running the Javanese in the fall and the Balinese in the spring.
Excellent, excellent. So, you know, the course offerings are basically the ensembles. Are there any other course offerings in world music to date?
Currently, there's a survey of music and world cultures, which is a survey course of music around the globe. Focuses more or less on geographical regions. So over the course of the semester, we'll go through music in Asia, we'll go through music in Africa, we go through music in the Americas, music in the Arab world, and do about a 4 to 5 week unit on each. In the spring semester, I offer a Music of Africa course, which pays particular interest to music in sub-Saharan Africa, music of the African diaspora in both North and South America, as well as popular music in Africa today.
And you have, I guess, we can get a minor in world music. There's a new minor degree. And I guess where I'm going with this question is, many of the students you have in world music, and this would be unlike jazz, but in world music, they're not necessarily music majors. Some of them are, but your ensembles are open to all students at WVU.
That's correct. In fact, I have one student this semester who's been in a number of ensembles, and since we've just launched this new minor in world music, she's a senior, so she may be the first to graduate with this minor, and she's a sports physiology major. She's been in a number of the ensembles. She was on the study abroad trip to Ghana this summer. She's in the world music class. She basically has to take one more course to do that. So that's a nice thing about the world music minor and the ensemble, is that it's open and available to all majors, all students, both undergraduate and graduate students across campus.
So in contrast to that, the jazz students pretty much come in, they have some musical ability, talent, they've taken lessons, jazz chops.
For the most part, but they're not necessarily music majors. There's actually a jazz major, and so we always have a few of those, and there's a graduate program in jazz pedagogy, so there'll always be some of those, and they're going to, of course, be the most accomplished. By far, the majority of the students in the program are actually music education majors. So they have a certain musical ability and already have some jazz experience. But we do have non-majors. We tend to always have some engineering students, sometimes journalism, sometimes philosophy. So it's open to everyone on campus, so they do take advantage of that. And now with the new minor in jazz available, I anticipate that will probably be even more common.
That's great. You know, the students that are jazz majors at this point, so what happens to them after they leave WVU, they graduate? What do they do? Where do they go? They've
all been, every last one, very successful, and they've gone in very different directions. Some are freelance players, freelance in Chicago, freelance in Nashville, some down in Florida. Many have gone on to graduate school, both in the United States and abroad. Some have gone into military music. Others,
when you say military music, be more specific.
Like to play in an Army jazz band,
jazz
for instance,
band,
Navy
okay.
rock and roll band, that sort of thing. Others have gone on to be touring professionals. My most favorite at the moment is someone was just on the road with Ricky Martin. So used their jazz skills to play with Ricky Martin. I think that was pretty interesting. And so they've all done real well. And others have gone on to teach, both at small liberal arts colleges, private institutions, to other major universities in the United States.
You know, we had an alum come back and speak at commencement last spring.
Yeah.
And Allison
Miller,
and she was turned the students on. She did a great job at commencement. But I've never heard her play. She's a jazz drummer.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, and
Good
she's
composer,
tell us a
too.
little bit about Allison Miller.
Well, she was a student here a few years ago, and she's had a very successful freelance career. Lives in New York, has been on the road with a lot of different performing artists, and we've had her back a few times to give percussion workshops and talk about her career and building a career in jazz and commercial music.
Certainly, the business of all of that is very integral
Yes.
knowledge for the students to have as they start to embark on those kinds of things.
It's critical, and it's not always addressed at the university level.
Right,
So,
right. It's good to bring our alumni back. We appreciate it immensely when alumni come back and share their experiences with the students and with the faculty. It's always precious time for that. So we don't really have graduates out of world music, but what are some of your long-term students who have been involved in the program? What are they doing these days?
They do a variety of things. In fact, probably one of my first, my first graduate student at WVU when I arrived, he was a music education master's student, and he went on to teach in Indonesia, and now he's teaching in South Korea. So he's using his background in music education and world music to teach music of other cultures in diverse cultures. So he's really applied it well. A number of other students have used it in a variety of different ways, both for their own personal enjoyment as well as sort of increasing the multicultural activity that they're going to use in their teaching. Some are going on and contemplating ethnomusicology master's degrees now. I have 2 students that have looked into those programs. And I think overall it just sort of widens the vision of the students that come through the world music program. Once they're exposed to music from other cultures and they know a little bit more about other cultures, they're not quite as intimidated to go out into the world and experience them for themselves. I know a lot of students that have gone through those ensembles are really excited to, once they graduate, to travel and to go and experience different parts of the world for themselves. And they do it with a sort of zeal and a knowledge that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Let's talk briefly about study abroad opportunities through your programs. You mentioned that it's opening up the world to them and giving them this opportunity that they may not have done initially on their own. So through WVU and our programs, we send students abroad. Let's talk about where we're going abroad in world music first.
Okay, I'll start with the most recent trip, which was this past summer in Ghana. The Ghana trip is a 4-week program where we travel as a group throughout different locations in Ghana and study the traditional music and culture of each distinct area. So by the time we've gone through the whole trip over the course of 4 weeks, we've really seen more of Ghana than most Ghanaians actually see that travel. And what that really offers them is they really get a sense of the diversity of what the country has to offer, the rich musical traditions, and they also realize, in terms of this global view, I think students that are especially going to Africa, a lot of times the media gives sort of a negative image about what happens in Africa, and this really opens them up to the positive side of what the continent has to offer, what the cultural has to offer, and the people that are there. They make real connections with the people that are there on these trips. A lot of them stay in contact for a long time through Facebook and email and other things afterwards, and they develop sort of this relationship with this other place that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do before.
And that's, let me just state for our audience that, you know, this is a study abroad opportunity through WVU that's open to students all across the country, essentially.
That's exactly true.
And they can register for the trip, and the expenses that they pay are for trip costs only, because the tuition that they could transfer back to a home institution is practically nothing, because WVU doesn't double charge students. They basically charge program cost.
Right. The cost of the trip is really the cost of the trip itself.
Right. And the tuition is just basically tacked on top of that without cost.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Ghana, what other trips do you have?
The other trip that we've both worked on is the Music Alive exchange with Brazil. 2 years ago, I took a group of students down for 3 weeks. We've both taken students down during the semester to do performances. We've done workshops. We have a Fulbright scholar with us this semester, working with your students,
Yeah.
right? A lot of them, and that's a really nice exchange, both from the students that we take down to Brazil and the Brazilian students that have reciprocated and come back
Who is
here.
that, Paul? That's
Sergio Alvarez is
Right.
a Fulbright scholar here, and it's wonderful because we're really mixing jazz and world music in his case, because he's a leading expert on showroom music, which is kind of a parallel to New Orleans jazz in America. Happened around the same time. So he's teaching an ensemble, this historically very important Brazilian style that really merges jazz and Brazilian music. The Music Alive exchange has been wonderful. All in all, we've sent maybe close to 50 students down, or brought that many back up, sometimes for short-term study, like a couple of weeks, sometimes for an entire semester. It's been really life-changing for a lot of these students. One of my former jazz majors moved to Brazil after visiting there for a semester and lived in Recife for a time, and since has left there and has moved to Hungary.
wow.
So
It's another example of another student who's not afraid to try new things.
Right.
That's excellent.
So Brazil has been the biggest exchange in terms of the jazz program. It's led to a lot of faculty collaborations. Mike and I have both performed with Sergio at international conferences, worked on various collaborations, doing so currently, and it's been wonderful for us. We've sent down many faculty members to perform down in Rio. So it's been really a wonderful experience. And jazz majors, in addition to Brazil, have gone to Trinidad and England, usually as a single person on a study abroad experience that I've helped them design it themselves.
Right. That's great. You mentioned something about a lot of the jazz students are music education majors at WVU, and you know, for me, that's an important part of fostering jazz in the public schools. And I think, so what is the health of jazz in West Virginia's public schools right now?
Well, it's healthy, but I wish it were stronger. It's not usually offered year-round in public schools, and I wish it was.
Is that because of the marching band phenomenon?
Yeah,
primarily?
it's a matter of resources and whatnot. I mean, I understand. There are some very strong programs in the state, and we get the majority of our students in the jazz program from in-state, but we also get them from neighboring states, and of course a lot of foreign students now. We have Brazilian students here and Malaysian students, and that's been a big part of it.
That's excellent. Those foreign students, when they come and study with our students, I mean, that opens up a whole other world also for our students without leaving campus. Essentially, it's great interaction.
Absolutely, and they form truly a worldwide network. These people all stay in touch, and they continue to perform together, and it creates a wonderful opportunity.
So how do your students in world music connect across campus to other students? Is there ways through the program that happens?
Oh, absolutely. I think, still on the same topic, a big part of the international college, my graduate student currently right now is from Brazil, and he certainly has connections to other international students, which a number of times he brings into the ensembles or sort of recruits into the ensembles. I remember we had the last 3 years ago when we had the gamelan, we had a Malaysian student who had never learned gamelan or had studied very little gamelan in Malaysia, but comes to the U.S. and learns gamelan. Other students find out about it. We currently have a large contingent of engineering students in the steel band, Most of the engineering, many of the engineering students that are in the steel band have had prior musical experience, but didn't necessarily want to keep up on their particular instrument once they got to college. But they were interested in the music and they wanted to play, so they joined the steel band and they spread it amongst their friends. And now we have quite a large contingent of, like I said, engineering students in steel band. African Music and Dance Ensemble really attracts probably the widest variety of students, from international students to engineering. We have biology, we've had forensics, we've had sports physiology, business, multidisciplinary studies, you name it. It's just about almost every student major, I think, has come through that ensemble at one point in time.
So one of the trips that occurred this past year, well, actually during 2012, and we need to mention, was the Smithsonian Folklife Festival.
Right.
And the Steel Drum Band was down there for 2 long weeks in D.C. You want to tell us about that experience?
2 hot weeks in D.C., record-setting days of 104 degrees in the shade on the National Mall. But it was really a wonderful experience. We were able to bring our band with a few recent alumni to help perform on the Mall. We did a variety of tunes for the Folklife Festival in their celebration of 150 years of land-grant institutions. Really celebrating the folk life that the Steel Band and the World Music Center and jazz and what those ensembles bring to the state of West Virginia. So we were there 2 weeks. We performed every day, sometimes multiple times a day. We had terrific crowds. We had a number of guest artists, including Dr. Ellie Minette, the founder of the father of the modern steel drum, did a performance with us, and a unique collaborative concert with University of Texas Pan American. We did a piece with Steel Band and Mariachi Ensemble. To our knowledge, it's the first ever collaboration of such world music. But it was really a wonderful experience for everyone involved. The students really got an opportunity to showcase their talents, to represent the university. And what I found afterwards, a lot of them commented on how much that experience really made them feel like professional musicians. Here they are representing, they're on a very tight touring schedule, and they really got a good taste of what it's like to be on the road.
Right.
So I think it really opened them in a wide number of ways.
Right. And it's an amazing experience, to be in D.C. for an extended period of time and go and, visit all the museums, which are, most of them, if they're government sponsored, they're free of charge, and that's just fantastic for students to be able to have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
I remember before I moved overseas years ago, and I had never been to D.C. before, and I thought, well, before I leave the country for an extended, indefinite period of time, I need to go spend some time in D.C. to see what that's like, and it was an amazing experience for a young man to go and just spend 5 days in D.C. and
to be there on the 4th of July was even...
Right. That was special for our students. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to get that one in there because, as you mentioned, there was the land grant celebration, anniversary, and Folklife Festival, and we were happy that WVU chose our program to go down there. Tell us a quick little bit about Ellie Minette. And he came from Trinidad to the United States and founded the instrument, and then came to WVU.
Yep. Former dean and former percussion teacher Phil Faini was sort of the founder of the World Music Performance Center in the early 90s, and brought Dr. Minette to the university to start what was called the University Tuning Project, in which students were actively building and tuning the instruments as well. Like I mentioned, Dr. Minette is credited as the father of the modern steel drum, as really sort of solidifying the design, the layout of the notes in the pan itself, and sort of refining those tuning methods. And he was training them in the early 90s at WVU to go out and build these instruments, and many of them have started lucrative careers on their own, building and tuning pans on their own now.
That's great. So you mentioned the jazz degree, and the undergraduate degree, and the graduate degree.
Yes.
So tell us what's happening with the graduate studies program in jazz, and what's special about it?
It's a master's in jazz pedagogy, different than jazz performance, and it enables those students to have a tremendous amount of classroom experience. That it's a lot of hands-on. They're directing and coaching ensembles. They're teaching improvisation classes. They'll be teaching private lessons in jazz studies. Sometimes they'll be teaching jazz history. And so it's a degree that's about learning how to teach jazz studies. And so those people, sometimes they come from a jazz performance background. They're looking for a graduate program that's not just more of the same performance type studies. Other times they're people that really want a career in higher education, and they might not have any kind of educational background, and this is a way they can get it. I get a lot of returning teachers, people that have been out for a while, or musicians that have been on the road for some time that decide they want to get involved in education as a career, and so it's a wonderful degree for them.
Let me ask you this question, gentlemen. Let's say we have a number of music teachers out teaching right now in West Virginia or adjacent state, and they're thinking they want to go back to school. As a professor of music, what would be your recommendation of study? What should that teacher, that's public school teacher, focus on and prepare themselves to be? How should they prepare themselves to become a better musician and a better educator as they go through graduate study?
Well,
I'll let you go first.
Yeah. I mean, I think that as they probably already know, that it's important that they really focus at that point. It's their opportunity to really improve as a musician, improve as a teacher, to draw upon the experiences that they've had and be able to share those with others and to learn. I think it's the seriousness with which they need to approach practicing again. Sometimes educators get out of that habit.
I think it always depends on what a student's interest is. I mean, obviously that's important as well. But, I've always thought that, if they want to go into graduate study, I mean, they've done the education thing. They've taken those courses and they've had that focus in music and education. And I think they need to really focus on their craft as a musician.
I think it's important that that's what they really are doing. They're focusing on that and also taking the opportunity to take part in things that they've never been able to before. So say someone was a trumpet player and they went through and they've been teaching school, but maybe they never had an opportunity to play in a gamelan orchestra.
Right.
And here's that opportunity. So it's a chance to do that without being weighted down by so
Well, I
many
shouldn't have asked
required
such a heavy question at the end of the show because we've really run out of time. I want to thank both of you for coming on the show, and it's really great to have you here. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks again.
Great, thank you.
So as we wrap up our show, thanks again to our guests for coming on the show. It's much appreciated. I want to thank the staff here at the State Library and Cultural Center for their work on this production. Their efforts are also invaluable. We much appreciate that. I also want to thank you for watching Focus on the Arts. If you would like any further information about the College of Creative Arts at WVU, please visit our website, www.ccarts.wvu.edu. Thanks again for watching. See you again on Focus on the Arts.